Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to Let's Talk, Let's Listen. Let's Talk, Let's Listen. In case you don't know, we exist to provide a format that will allow for healthy, productive conversations regarding social injustices that are experienced by people of color all over the world. And so I am so excited to come to you today. I am your host, Felicia Hamilton. And our topic of conversation, which is quite controversial, is defunding police and investing in communities. So I invite you to participate in tonight's conversation. Feel free to post your comments or even any questions that you may have in the comments section. We want you to be involved in this very important topic of conversation. Now, without any further delay, I want to introduce to you our guest for the evening. Excuse me, I'm sorry. He is an author, a speaker, social worker, child and family advocate, and my fellow Toastmaster. Will you please welcome Mr. Jeffrey Fulkerson?
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
All right. How are you doing, Felicia?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show today and have this conversation with us. I am really, really excited about it.
Well, I feel honored to be asked to join you tonight.
Well, awesome. I appreciate that. Before we get started, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about you. Share a little bit of your bio. I know I asked you for your bio the other day and I was reading through it and I was like, oh my goodness, no one can tell this story like he can. So, usually we can talk about ourselves. And so I would just love for you to share with our audience about you and your accomplishments and why you're here today.
Well, I mean, I guess I can start with, that last question, why I'm here today. I mean, you asked me, and I think that's the obvious thing. But I think, the issues that you're talking about tonight about defunding the police, I think that's really something that resonates with me, especially in light of what happened to George Floyd. I think as an African-American man, I mean, it really touched me in a way that really angered me. But at the same time, it really lit a fire in me, and probably a lot of other people too. But as far as my bio is concerned, I am a graduate of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I earned my undergrad degrees and graduate degrees there. I also have a graduate certificate from George Mason University in nonprofit management and leadership. And I'm also happen to be the author of 3 books. I independently published. My first book was called Adinkraheen, Fear of a Black Planet. And then I had a second book that I published, and the title of it was Real Men Raise Champions, Unleashing Your Inner Coach. And the third book was Young Achiever Playbook, which I published last year. And the subtitle for that book is Planning to Achieve. So I try to hit a lot of demographics, with my writing, and that's what I'm proud of. I'm happily married, been married for 27 years, and I have a 16-year-old son who makes me smile every day. So
that's beautiful. Awesome. Congratulations on that accomplishment. Not many people can say that they've been married in these times 5 years or 2 years or 3 years or even 1 year. So hats off to you. And, it's beautiful to see you as a Black man who has accomplished so much and having a heart to serve. Because clearly, as I look at your bio, I can see that you do have a heart to serve. And I just commend you for that. So thank you very much for all that you're doing in the community, especially your social work activity.
All right, thank you.
And, I was listening to you when you first shared with why you're here today. And I think a lot of us can identify. I mean, this show exists because of George Floyd and his death. I've often said this before. I would have never done anything like this in a million years. I never had a thought to do it. It was never something that I had a desire to do. And My world absolutely changed 2 months ago.
Mm.
And what sparked for me was the fact that I think I woke up with an understanding that I had a role to play. And oftentimes, a lot of us, we kind of sit on the sidelines and we watch things happen. We watch these injustices. We watch with the thought of, either as a Christian, me personally, I was kind of like, well, I'm praying about it. I'm just going to trust God, and I woke up that day thinking, you know what, that's not enough. That is absolutely not enough. It's time for us to use our voices and be heard. And it's not about noise. This time it's not about noise. I know a lot of times there's a lot of noise that we end up hearing as a result of these types of events. But now we're at a point in our community, or in our country, where we are using our voices to make a difference, and we're also demanding change. Mm-hmm. And we're actually putting some legs to our faith and putting some action behind the words that we're speaking. And so that I certainly can resonate with what you said. And I believe that this show is an opportunity for, again, us to have dialogue, to have conversations, to create some awareness. And that is my hope tonight, as we tackle this conversation about defunding police, that we actually will create some awareness. There is so many misnomers about the subject. There's a lot of misinformation that's floated out there. And I don't think a lot of people take the time to actually do the research themselves to truly understand what we mean when we say defund the police. They almost use the word unfund simultaneously, as if that's the same thing, and that's not what we're saying. And before we get too deep into that conversation, I would just love to share a commercial that I happened across one day, probably about a month or two ago. It's a commercial that was put out by the Donald Trump campaign. And I think it's a great starting point for our conversation tonight. So, producer Nadia, will you play the video?
Reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Wow. And let me preface this by saying this is not a conversation. We're not, I want to have a very partisan conversation here. I am not promoting one candidate over another. So that's not the reason I shared that video. So I want to make sure that that's clear. However, I was in my living room one day. I work from home, as a lot of us do now. And I walked past the television as that commercial started, and it stopped me in my tracks. Mm-hmm. And I stood there and I watched it. And it took my breath away. It took my breath away that someone would decide that that was okay to produce and to air on television. Mm-hmm. And so, first of all, I would love to know, have you seen that commercial before?
Yes, I have. And one thing you should realize about that commercial is he says that you will not be safe in Joe Biden's America, but all those images were taken from Donald Trump's America.
So, exactly. Interesting. Yeah. What were your thoughts when you first saw that?
It's no secret that I'm no fan of the other guy, and I'm not speaking about Joe Biden. I think there are a lot of things that we need as a country. I mean, some people talk about make America great again, but I always thought, being an American was all about creating a more perfect union. And I think these days, there are forces out there trying to divide us.
Yes.
And the other guy, he really spends a lot of time trying to divide us, with a lot of his rhetoric. But I think the commercial that you just showed, just really just shows that, that a person, we should be talking about the issues. And sure, there's plenty of things that can be said about violence in America, riots, protests, and things like that. But we also got to understand that people are protesting for a reason.
Yes.
And there's also a lot of people out there who are peacefully protesting.
Yes.
But there are forces out there that are mixed in with the peaceful protests, and they call them vigilantes. Mm-hmm. And they're doing they're breaking into the buildings, they're trying to burn things down and things like that. And a lot of them don't look like you and I. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah.
And
proven. That's actually been proven.
Yeah.
Individuals have been identified and arrested, and it's clear that was the goal. That was the goal, to diminish what we were trying to accomplish.
No, and all it does, it just really diminishes the message that the peaceful protesters are trying to get across. Sure, people are chanting defund the police, but it's not about defunding the police, because there are a lot of good police officers out there that are doing good work, and they're out there to serve and protect. But you have, there's a small group, some small bad apples that are out there up to no good, and they're going to do everything they can to make the Black Lives Matter movement look bad.
Sure.
And so if you have this small group, and that's really where, like, you look at Portland, what's going on in Portland, and you have these federal forces coming in and trying to force these vigilantes, or what they try to say is the Black Lives Matter movement, out. But it's just really, they're focused on a small group, but because that small group is acting up, it spreads like wildfire to all those peaceful protesters, that aren't trying to burn down buildings. All they're trying to do is make a statement.
Yeah.
And that's what's really disheartening about this whole situation. And also the other guy who occupies the White House, you're sitting here and seeing him unleash federal forces on American citizens. And it really just burns me up, when you see that.
Right.
And so I just, I pray. I'm a Christian myself, and I pray every night, for the soul of this nation. And I think that, we're on a track right now that really, it doesn't feel good. Especially when you are in the midst of a pandemic, and then you have the George Floyd situation occur. But we got to remember that there were plenty of deaths, Black deaths, prior to George Floyd. That look at the Trayvon Martins, you look at Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. All these deaths, and these are recent ones. Trayvon Martin, he was years ago, but then but it just continue. You got athletes taking knees. Colin Kaepernick, he's blacklisted from the NFL. Still doesn't have a job, so you have all these things going on. And then when George Floyd, when he died, the NFL, they developed a conscience, and, they started listening.
Right.
They started saying that Colin Kaepernick was right, for taking a knee. And that's a peaceful protest.
Right. And you know what? I have my own thoughts about that. I think a lot of the support that we're seeing now from corporations, organizations, is more, in my opinion, it's based on, I guess what I can say, the best way I think I can say this is, it's all about the dollars.
Yeah.
When you start threatening their dollars, then all of a sudden, everyone can come into agreement, because we don't want to lose sponsorship. We don't want to use, we don't want to lose these organizations that are, in essence, making us who we are. And so that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, probably another show that we could talk about that, because it alarms me. Don't misunderstand me when I say I do know that there are some that are genuine in their support. And I know my company, for one, I've been just amazed at what they have been doing. And I know that there are other organizations and corporations just like that who feel as if, okay, we can do something and we're going to do it, and we're going to take our dollars. We're going to use our dollars for good, and actually get behind this movement and support it. It's unfortunate there are some who are only now arriving to this agreement with us that there is a need for change because their dollars are threatened. Their bottom line is being threatened. But again, that's a whole nother subject. And I really want to dive into this defunding police and investing in communities topic a little bit more in detail. And when I was doing my research, I ran across a video. I actually shared that video with you, from a young lady named Marbury Stolly Butts. And it was actually on, I think it was divest.org. And a lot of people don't understand, but this idea of defunding police and investing in communities is not new. This is actually an idea that has been out there for a number of years, and there's been a lot of campaigning in order to really get our lawmakers to see and to understand the need for investing in community, and to take a look at the policing, the dollars that they're putting into policing, instead of actually investing in the community and going in and making sure that there's affordable housing for individuals who need it, making sure that our children are being educated, ensuring that those with mental illnesses are actually getting the care that they need. And so I'd like to talk about that a little bit with you, and just to hear your thoughts on it. And I mean, first of all, for it or against it, what do you think? Should we divest? Should we defund our requirements? Or
I think there are pros associated with divesting, but there also are cons. And I think a lot of times, it's hard to pull yourself. It really depends on what the family situation is, or the individual situation is. Because if you are in a situation where you have everything you need, and you rely on certain elements in society to actually allow you to be able to make ends meet, I mean, it's hard to divest. But I mean, a lot of times, I'll sit and hear that, such and such company A is donating money to this politician's campaign, and I would want to say, well, I'm not spending any more money, at company A, because they are supporting this individual. And so that's a way of withholding your resources from from individuals, but does it really have an impact? And I think there's movements like Blackout, where they pick a certain day, of the year, or a certain period of time, where they say, well, we're only going to give money to Black organizations or whatever, Black businesses, or we're not going to spend any money on this day, on Juneteenth, because we want to make a point of how important it is, how much of an impact Black people have on the economy. So we want people to.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said something, and it just triggered a thought with me, that those dollars that we spend ultimately are tax dollars, right? That directly go back to funding the police. And the problem that I see, the way I see it is, you mentioned earlier, it depends on the family dynamic. It depends on, it's really about, demographics, right?
Yeah.
And for instance, one of the things I saw in the video was she made reference to, she kind of did a comparison, like you have the Hamptons. The Hamptons aren't heavily policed. They don't need to be.
That's right. Yeah.
But then you have places like St. Louis and there are billions of dollars. They have a budget that is astronomical.
Mm.
And they invest in policing the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about divesting, we're not saying, okay, let's just take all of those resources and move them over here. What we're saying is, let's take a look at what is the core issue.
Mm-hmm.
Why are the kids hanging on the street corners?
That's
why
right.
why are all of these broken homes? Why do we have this large percentage of African American men in a prison system?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at that and let's try to fix that.
Well, you know what, I think we as a country, we have it all wrong. I mean, we sit back and we spend a lot of money on prisons.
Yes.
And funding the police force.
By the way, let's remember that.
Yeah, for profit. Yeah, for profit.
Yes.
So for-profit prisons, and then you're funding the police and giving them equipment that's really known for the military, tanks and things like that. And so you're building up their capacity to do serious harm, and what happens, is it starts this thinking like, okay, we have to fill up. If you have a private motive, or a money-making motive, yes, you're going to do everything you can to lock as many people up as you can.
Yes.
You're going to have trumped up charges against easy targets. And those easy targets happen to be people that look like you and me or persons of color. Right. And they also happen to be in poor communities, poor neighborhoods.
Yeah. And
that's what the video was talking about, just the criminalization of poverty or impoverished people, because, those are easy targets. Those are the areas where you have the most police presence. Because you don't see police officers going into wealthy communities. They're trying to keep people out of wealthy communities, but they're not patrolling the streets.
They're concerned about their safety.
Yeah, concerned about protecting their homes, their lives, and all that stuff. But when it comes to poor communities, and I grew up in a poor community, and police presence. I was in a small town, but even though I was in a small town, the police presence was heavier there than it was in the richer sections of my small town in Tennessee. But you had that going on, and then you talk about the police force itself. It's like they, you have some, like I said, I don't think defund the police is all about beating up on police. I think it's a reaction to what happened to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin and, Eric Garner. I can go down the list. Yes. But, and that's, and Black, and I heard the other day, the other guy, he would talk about, asked a question, what do you think about all these Black deaths? And he's talking about white people are getting killed too. And I understand that. But it's not in a disproportionate way, because when you turn on the news, you hear a lot about Black death, Black people getting shot, Black people getting mistreated, by police officers. But again, it goes back to this motive of trying to make sure that we have people in prison beds or jail cells and things like that. And persons of color, those are the easy targets. And those are the ones that are getting locked up. And those are the ones who are getting mistreated. And also, you got to look at this, like you go up to Ferguson, Missouri. And I know when that was a hot news item, you had, they talked about how, Black people would get pulled over and get ticketed. So they were handing out tickets, and these tickets had to be paid. So that was a funding source, a revenue stream for a lot of these municipalities, in these cities like Ferguson, Missouri, and places like that. So you have that going on, and it's usually they pulling over persons of color, Black people and other persons of color. And again, that's an easy mark. So it goes more than just, it's more than just Black people getting pulled over and being treated like, all the people that I just listed. It's more about those microaggressions, those micro things that people do to, really, I guess, fund
Mhm.
police activity in certain
Right.
cities.
Right. Absolutely. I certainly do agree with you on that. And I think about how there's so many things that we criminalize that, you sit back and you're just like, really?
Mhm.
You wrote a person a ticket for that? And it is about, it's a funding stream, as you stated. And then also, again, I want to go back to talking about investing in the communities and what that looks like. So
Mhm.
one of in a bit of my research, I heard a young lady, and she was discussing about the idea, and this has been tossed around, quite a bit, but she was talking about the idea of actually having social workers.
Mhm.
And as a social worker, this is going to be a great one, a good question for you, because I'm interested in your thoughts. But you talked about having social workers who would actually respond to certain calls versus a police officer who's not equipped to handle,
Mhm.
whatever that particular issue is.
Mhm.
For instance, we've seen numerous times where someone who's in mental distress, perhaps, right? And there is a police, a 911 call made. We send the police out, and it ends up becoming violent because they're not equipped, first of all, to de-escalate the situation,
Yeah.
and they're not equipped to assess the situation.
Mhm.
And the idea about having trained social workers to go and accompany them on these types of calls would be, in theory, it sounds like it would be a good idea, but I'm
Mhm.
not a social worker. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think police officers, they go into some pretty tough situations. I mean, and de-escalation is important, and I think some situations, I mean, would not be appropriate for a social worker to go into. Especially if it requires them to pull their guns out and start being in gunfights, with the criminals or the
Yes.
criminal element. But there are situations where someone is about to commit suicide or whatever, and I think you do need a social worker or a mental health professional on hand who can actually identify what's going on with the person
Yeah.
and be able to come up with the best solution for, I guess, de-escalating the situation. You have people, social workers who work for adult protection services or child protection services or whatever. And in many of those cases, they do joint investigations where these are cases where you have abuse and neglect occurring. And, you have, social workers who are, equipped to just go in and, when they ask the questions, try to determine whether abuse and neglect occurred. And based on those responses, I mean, they're able to come up with a safety plan, or if they have to file a protective order or if they have to put an emergency removal order, that's stuff that they would do, to take the child or the adult out of the situation.
Correct.
But in those cases, those are joint investigations, trying to get at the truth and whether it's founded or unfounded. But you have, I mean, you have, I think the situations I've seen, just in the news, I mean, just really didn't have to go to the level of violence or really excessive force, level of force that it went to, because, I mean, why would you hold your knee on someone's neck for almost 9 minutes and, think that was right? And then you have other officers around you who could have told you, man, that's enough. That's enough. So it really goes down. It's a heart issue. That's what it goes down.
I
Back to.
absolutely agree.
It's
Absolutely.
more about do you value human life? If you value human life, and if you neutralize the problem, I mean, ease up, and then you walk away and the other person walks away. But
It doesn't matter if do you value human life, do you value all human life?
that's right. That's right. That's
So
right.
what are you saying?
You know what? I mean, the thing about it though, like I know there's this. I mean, every time people say or we say Black Lives Matter, you know, people want to say all lives matter or blue lives matter or whatever. Yeah, I mean, all those different elements, they matter, but Black lives matter too.
Yeah, and that's what we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, and we have a history. I mean, there's a history that we have as a people that, you know, I mean, you're talking about slavery, you're talking about Jim Crow, you're talking about micro aggressions, you know, and those are the kind of things that are going on, you know, that have gone on that we're trying to come out of. But at the same time, it's like when we have a movement like the Black Lives Matter movement or whatever, people want to try to discredit it. And what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling is there are elements from the conservative side that, you know, really are you know, just trying to disrupt or discredit the Black Lives movement, which is a legitimate movement. It's not like it's not about hate. It's all about love and unity, and just really allowing. I mean, really allowing Black people to, you know, be seen.
Yes, let's level the playing field.
Yeah,
You know, let's get to the point where you see everyone as equals.
that's right.
Honestly, I don't understand why that's that hard.
Yeah, it's not hard. It's not hard, but at the same time, it's like I don't know, the more we try to be seen, I mean, the more they want to put us back in the box. And that right there is the problem. I mean, it's like we are at a point where there's no way you're going to put us back in the box because we're out in the open now, and we are
You know what?
exercising our freedoms.
You're absolutely right. And what comes to my mind when you say that, you know, we have to be people who we have to stand up, and we have to stand up for everyone. And the problem that we've had in this society, in our country as a whole, is that we have sat back and we have let others make decisions that directly affect us, and we have not gotten involved. That's what I see as the problem. And I think, you know, even as we talk about this idea of investing in communities, so there are laws that need to be written, and we as a people have to be involved in the writing of those laws. When we elect our state, our local government officials, we have to hold them to task and hold them accountable. We can't just, you know, elect someone, send them to office, and allow them to do whatever it is they desire to do. And we know most of them are controlled by lobbyists, right? And so they have the lobbyists' best interests at heart. And so when we say to them, okay, I'm sending you to Congress, I'm sending you to the Senate, I'm sending you to that courtroom, but this is what I want. And we have to hold them to task. We have to say to them, we need more money for social services.
Yeah.
We need you to remove the police out of our schools, put in more counselors. Our kids don't need to be policed in school. They need to be counseled. They need to be helped. They need to be educated. They need to know that there is a better life for them, because a lot of them, unfortunately, are not seeing that in the homes that they're coming from.
That's right.
We need to take those resources that we continually pour into policing the communities, and we need to invest in them. We need to open up community centers again. I can remember growing up and having that community center. And
well, I worked, I was, at one point in my life, my career, I was a Upward Bound director. And we work with low-income first-generation high school students to prepare them for college. And
I think I saw it in your bio. Yeah, Upward Bound.
Yeah, it's called Upward Bound. And you know, but during that time that I was with the Upward Bound program up in Massachusetts, I mean, I used to do a lot of, you know, just reading and research. And there are studies that have shown that they start tracking you in the third grade. are tracking kids in the 3rd grade. And that's how they determine how many prisons they need to build, to prepare for, these kids who are going to grow up and become adults. But then they engage in criminal behavior.
Sorry, wait. They start tracking in the 3rd grade to determine how many prisons to build.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then what goes on in our schools, you have a lot of excessive force that's applied to a lot of students, where they are suspended.
Yes.
They are, it's either in school, out of school. And those are the kind of things that, that are going on that a lot of people don't talk about. But it's problematic because, one, they're already setting our kids up. But see, what we need more people in those schools that look like you and me, or persons of color, who actually understand, what persons of color need, and also what the historical piece, which is important. So that right there is really what's going on. Is there any way we could take a break, Felicia?
Sure. Yeah. Everything okay?
Yeah, I got something I gotta attend to.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so while Jay is taking a quick break, we are going, I want to share a little bit of some of the research that I actually ran across this past week as I was looking into this subject. And there was a comment, and I'm going to read it to you from the young lady that I mentioned earlier, Mabry Stolly Butts. I want to make sure that I'm quoting her and the video. And I'm going to post the video. It's about a 7-minute video. I'm going to post that on Let's Talk, Let's Listen for you guys to actually have an opportunity to take a look at that and really, digest the information. But she said something. She says, when you are throwing this money into policing, what you're actually saying is that surveillance is more important, and the caging of Black and brown people is more important than the actual care of those same people. And so as we were talking tonight, my mind just kept going, in different directions as I'm thinking about all of the ways that when we talk about investing in communities, we truly have to make sure that we are looking at going into these communities and assessing the needs when budgets are being created, when the city budget is being looked at, and the planning is going for, that we have a voice and that we say, okay, instead of giving these dollars here for new equipment, for riot gear, let's take those dollars and use them in order to open up this new community center, or to fund some of the organizations that are already in existence that most often operate at a deficit, and they depend on volunteers. They depend on those dollars coming in from, the community or from philanthropists to fund them. And in my opinion, this is a wealthy country, and our tax dollars are not being used the way they should be used. And so that is, when I continue to think about this and to think about what is necessary in order to move these communities forward, to move these individuals out of poverty, to get to a place where they are feeling safe and secure in their own neighborhoods, and the police are truly there to ensure their safety and not to, I guess my point I'm trying to make is they're not there to simply keep them in line. That's not the answer. And so I'm just thinking, Jay, I see you're back. Hi. I think that we really have to take a look at it, have to take a look at the budgets. We have to, once again, we've got to hold our Congress people to task. We've got to, be involved in city council and in the budget planning, because again, these are our dollars. And I think a lot of us don't realize the power that we have, not only in our vote, but in our voice. And we have to stand up and we have to say, enough is enough. And we want change. And we're not going to stop until we see the change.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. I mean, that's right on target. I mean, there's a lot of, as a social worker, who's worked with young people pretty much his whole career. I understand the importance of, sowing into young people's lives, because the sooner you can, I mean, I'm talking like I was a YMCA director at one point. I worked with high school students with my Upper Bound program, and the impact that a concerned adult can have on young people, I mean, really goes a long way. I mean, I still have high school students that I work with who are in their 30s now. And, and I stay in contact with them on Facebook, and they're doing positive things, graduated from college, they applied and received good jobs and things like that. And even kids who were in the elementary school when I was a YMCA director, and we had summer camps for them and things like that. And there still are camps that are going on and are being held. Some camps, I mean, you have to pay a lot of money for, and there's some camps you have that are sponsored by Parks and Recreation, departments. Those things go on during the summer. But it's really, we are in a weird period right now where, a lot of these camps are not being offered. And it really makes it difficult because I mean, you have a generation of kids missing an important piece of what is going to help them develop into full persons, and with values, with morals, and that kind of stuff. And then then some of them may fall off they may fall with a crowd, a negative peer group that, that they can't shake free of. Some kids are falling into gangs because, one, they don't have school to contend with. So now they say, well, I'm going to engage in some illegal behavior. I'm going to break in.
Alternatives.
Say it again.
The problem is we don't give them alternatives.
That's right. That's right.
Do they have? If all I see are gangbangers, and it's been, I've seen countless movies, depicting this particular scenario, where the gang members are the only family that they have. Yeah. They feel protected.
That's right.
They feel as if they have a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And so the whole point, what we're saying here is, let's give them that sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. So let's do it in their communities. Just as you said, you have to sow into the lives of these kids. Yeah, and we have to them while they're young. We have to sow into them. We have to let them know that they matter. Yeah. We have to let them know that they are important and they have worth. Mm-hmm. And they can accomplish anything that they can. But unless someone is telling them that, they don't know it.
That's right.
And so it again, investing in communities. We have to, if we're going to see a change, we have to change how we're spending our dollars.
But you know what? The nonprofit sector has to step up. I mean, it's like there are a lot of nonprofits out there doing good work.
But why do we have to depend on the nonprofits? I mean, I hear you, but I'm mm-hmm. playing devil's advocate. Why do we have to depend on the nonprofits when we have billions of dollars mm-hmm. that we could use in a more productive manner?
Well, I think with that, I mean, it's all about how do you coordinate that? How do you get everybody on the same page as it relates? Now, you look at, back in the, during like in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they had Black Wall Street, and, they had a whole community where they built an economy that really worked for people.
Yes.
Black people, and that right there was something that, really to this day, I mean, just blows people's mind. But it just wasn't Tulsa, Oklahoma. You had places like in Wilmington, North Carolina, and places like that, where they had thriving Black communities and they all were on the same page. And, 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 they all w So how do you replicate that in today's age? And that's really difficult, because it's really hard to get people on.
Overnight,
Yeah, you can't do it overnight. It's possible. Don't get me wrong. It's
Right.
possible, but it's like, who do you trust to, I guess, lead the effort? Is it? I mean, because sometimes you get into this. I get this sense that everybody is all about their territory. Like, this is my space, this is your space, and this is your space. You stay in your space. You stay in your lane. And it's like we all have the same goal, but we all want to do our own thing. And we all want to elevate our own program to where it is it's seen by the people that can actually give us money, and you leave everybody else behind. So collaboration, is kind of frowned upon, even though a lot of the funding sources, they are recommending that you do collaborate. And that's really what is going on. And, and that's what I've been hearing, and all the work I've done over the past 20 plus years is that collaboration is key, because there's a lot of funders who don't look like you and me,
Yes.
but they want to serve communities of color.
Yes.
They depend on our expertise, our experiences, and things like that to really inform them and help them direct the funds to the right place. And that's what we need to see more of, but we also, like you said earlier, we also need to see more people that look like you and I on these boards where they're making decisions about, what organization should receive the money and what issues should be addressed. I mean, that's really important. Like, I'm part of an organization called Black Benefactors, and we actually give monies to Black-led organizations. So over 50%, 51% of their leadership has to be Black, and they also have to be serving Black communities. But that's Black Benefactors. But it's part of a larger movement of philanthropy, where, they're given to communities of color. It's a community investment network. So Black Benefactors have been part of that. They're no longer associated with communities, the Community Investment Network. But if you do the research and you go to their website, you'll see that Community Investment Network is really doing a lot of things that we're talking about right now in terms of wanting to invest in communities of color, primarily Black communities.
Okay, that's interesting. Black Benefactors. Where are they located?
Based out of Washington, D.C.
They are based out of Washington. Okay, very
good. Tracy Webb, she's our leader, our president.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm definitely going to take a look at that. I can see that.
The way it works is like we each contribute money to the fund. So like we do $300, as individuals, and we actually got a $10,000 check from Cavassier, which is a drink. They give our organization, Black Benefactors, $10,000 to give away to deserving nonprofits. So we're Black philanthropists, is what I'm trying to say.
I love that. That's awesome. And I think you asked a question a little bit ago about, where do we start? And I think the most important place that we can start is in our schools.
Yeah.
And you also made a comment earlier about there needs to be more individuals that look like you and I in these urban schools, or more Hispanics, or, people of color in general. They need to be represented, because it's not easy for someone who cannot totally relate to a child and what they're experiencing in their community to really speak into their life and actually even to gain their trust.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult. And so it still goes back to education. We have to make sure that we're educating so that there will be people that look like you and I in the schools who are sewing into our children, that there will be, you know, Black counselors who are there to meet those needs and to identify when a child is in crisis. That's the other thing. We need to be able to quickly identify when a child is in crisis and get the appropriate individuals involved. We also need to do more funding to, you know, our social services as a whole. Our foster care system, we know that's broken. And it's not, the answer is not always just to yank children out of those homes. Provide the resources to that family that they need. Provide the counseling services that they may need. We may have an issue where there is mental illness in the home, and that's affecting that child. We may have an issue where there's drug abuse. So we need counselors and substance abuse workers to be able to work together and try to steer this child from a life that they're destined to if no one intervenes. And so we need those dollars.
Those are great points too. And I would say this, I mean, there are a lot of white people in the struggle.
Yes.
Hashtag white siblings in the struggle.
Yes.
And they actually they lean on us heavily, you know, to gain an understanding, and they sincerely want to understand what we go through and feel on a daily basis.
I call them allies.
They're allies, and they're in the schools. I mean, some of them are in the schools, and they are doing good work, and they are sowing positive things into young people's lives. Right. And what we got to realize is that what our mom and dads went through when they were growing up, where they were in all Black schools, that's not coming back. That's true. Not coming back. That's sure, true. We do need more Black professionals going into education and social work and other types of careers that are helping professions.
We need to pay them well, though.
Yeah, say it again.
We need to pay them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt. They're essential. But what I'm saying though is that, you know, we have to develop these white teachers' capacity to really be able to relate, because it's really all about how do you relate to your own kids. So if you relate to your own kids in a positive way, yes, why don't you relate to my Black kid in a positive way? And that is what people have to get back to. They got to understand, like, be empathetic, you know, put yourself in, you know, my shoes. I mean, put yourself in the role of a parent, you know, and how you relate to your own child, or put yourself in the role of a spouse. Okay. How do you relate to your own spouse, you know, and all that stuff. I mean, it's just different roles that you put yourself in, that you have to really say, okay, if I'm in this role, you know, am I, you know, discriminating or because of the color of somebody's skin? Am I treating this person different because they're Black or Hispanic or whatever?
Yes.
How would I treat someone who was the same color as me? So stop looking at race or the color of someone's skin and just look at that other person as a human being, and do everything you can to relate to that person as a human being. Right. And it goes back to, you know, like the two greatest commandments are love your God and love your neighbor. Right. And I think being a person, you know, is all about trying to be in unity and, you know, have this bond of peace with everybody you come in contact with.
Right. And it goes back to what you said at the very beginning of our conversation. It's a hard issue.
It is a hard issue. Yeah.
It's a hard issue, you know, and although we're coming up with these ideas in the natural, how we can solve this problem, but at the root of it, it is a hard issue. And so, you know, that's that spiritual side of it that, you know, we're responsible for praying about.
Oh yeah.
And when we're praying, we get off of our knees and we do something.
That's right. That's
you know,
right.
so, Wow, Jay, this has been an awesome conversation. I cannot thank you enough for coming on this evening and sharing your thoughts. And before we wrap up, we've got about 3 minutes. And before we wrap up, I just want to give you the floor and just let you have final words.
Okay. Well, again, I do appreciate you inviting me to come on your show tonight. I mean, it really was a great discussion. I mean, I've learned a lot tonight from you and all the research you've conducted. But, I'm someone who I'm a social worker. I got into social work because I enjoy helping people help themselves. And I've also authored some books, Real Men Raise Champions, Unleashing Your Inner Coach, and also Young Achiever Playbook, Planning to Achieve. And I'm targeting, with one book, I'm targeting men, encouraging them to stand in the gap for their women and their children. And in the other book, Young Achiever Playbook, I'm targeting young people and trying to give them a prescription that they can, or give them a playbook or a script that they can follow to be successful in 4 areas: nurturing, learning, leading, and working. And, and that's really what I'm all about. But I really am concerned. I mean, I know that, people are shouting or chanting defund the police, but I mean, I just know that there are a lot of good police officers out there. There are more good police officers than bad police officers. And sometimes you do have some bad apples, in the bunch. And I mean, we have to, just hope and pray that, the leaders of these police departments, they weed out the bad apples and allow the good apples to, come to the fore or develop and grow and really do what they have been charged to do, which is to serve and protect. So, people are protesting for a reason. I mean, most of these protests are peaceful, and there are forces in our country that are trying to divide and cause people to kind of dip into their, just the hatred that they may have inside, or resentments and things like that. But what we have to do is we have to find the capacity to love each other. And that right there is really what's going to allow us to, really be the people that God wants us to, the man upstairs wants us to be. But I encourage people to go to my website, jafalkerson.wordpress.com, if you want to purchase any of my books. Is really at jafalkerson.wordpress.com/store. And that'll take you right to my storefront if you want to purchase any of my products. But thanks again for allowing me to be on the show.
Thank you so much, Jay. And what we'll do is make sure that we put your link. We'll drop your link on our page and make sure that everyone has that and has an opportunity to support you by purchasing one of your books, and not just purchasing a book, but actually to gain some wisdom and some knowledge, and perhaps it will, spark them to, have a call to action. So thank you again. I really do appreciate you joining us tonight. And to all of those who have joined us this evening, who are watching, even if you're watching the replay, thank you so much for your participation. I ask you, if you would, to engage in this conversation with us. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your ideas. And I want you on the show. If you want to have a dialogue about a particular topic or a conversation, and we want to continue this conversation, we can, because there are no clear-cut answers. I certainly don't know, have all of the answers, but I am on a mission to find out as much as I can about this particular subject, because I think it's something that is necessary. I think it's something that will be impactful in our society, and I think it's something that will change and revolutionize our communities. So again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I look forward to hearing from you and hearing about all of your ideas or your thoughts or even your questions. We're all in this together, so let's find out together how we can make a difference. Thanks so much for joining. Have a good night.